Hi there, let's talk sports fans. Thanks for tuning in to Nothing But Sports. And ironically enough, we will be having you covered for your sports talk today. And joining me on today's journey is Football Talk with Bo. How you doing, Bo?
Excellent. How are you, Dan?
You're not doing too bad. As I said to you before we went on air, had a break from being on air and Um, being itching to get back, and always nice to talk sports with you.
Absolutely.
So, we talked running backs last week,
Mhm.
Bo, and that is our first port of call. Saquon's, I was going to say, got paid. He has and hasn't done. It's the sort of thing where you've got a hole in your roof and you tarp it over, but the hole still exists. This is it. Obviously helps um, Saquon feel a little bit better, get a little bit more money so he can tell himself, yeah, I took on the establishment and I won. And the Giants are happy because he's in camp, which is obviously good for them. So it's the sort of situation where it fixes the problems today. But you've got that headache coming in the morning after a long night of drinking, and this is the situation. I'm not sure it solves anything long term, but I'm most of all I'm pleased for Saquon because he gets a little bit more
Mhm.
security this year. So it's just a case of ticking a box to get through the season. At this point, I'm sure there's still a little bit of hostility on both sides. I wasn't expecting the news when it came, though. It wouldn't have surprised me if on the eve of the season a deal come, but this seemed to come out of left field. What it does tell me is, yes, he does get a little bit money. Saquon wanted to be at camp, I think, because he could have probably made this deal down the road, but I think it tells you that. I'm not sure how you feel about this, Bo.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, obviously, there's a few things to this that are interesting, right? So, because he kept threatening to potentially just sit out the season, the Giants had to do something, right? And they were clearly unwilling to give him a long term deal, which is why this ultimately comes down to a 1 year. They gave him a little bit more because he basically said he wasn't going to play on the tag. So they give him a little bit more because they didn't really have another option at running back. But this doesn't really get rid of any of the hostility. This will calm the locker room a little bit. But beyond that, it looks like they're moving on from him. I mean, if you can't even give him the 2 year deal that he was looking for, um, it really kind of leans towards he's not going to be a Giant after this season. Um, so, yeah, I don't know that it necessarily, calms any tempers, but it at least gets him in camp. It at least gets the team on the field. But on the other end of it, he had to look at the way things have gone for guys that have sat out in the running back position. The last thing you want to do is come off the year that he had, um, and then pull that Le'Veon Bell type thing, sit a year, and really just damage your own career. So I think it was beneficial for him to be back in camp. He got a little bit more money than if he played on the tag. Um, it probably does help a little bit in the locker room that he got a contract instead of being forced on the tag. Players never like to play on the tag. It basically means that the team doesn't believe in you. And so, at least in this case, they're like, we believe in you for this year. which for him probably doesn't mean a lot, but for the team, it at least looks like the Giants tried to, do good by him. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that plays out. But ultimately, it makes it look like he's not going to be a Giant after this season.
That's what I think. I don't think they're carrying. They have no interest in carrying him on any such number beyond this year, which does mean some of these receivers need to take a jump this year. He is 80% of their offense. So for them to be, or at least if I was the GM, for me to be comfortable, you need to start carving out some playmakers what can take the load off. So I do find it interesting because somewhat they depend on him so much. What would their offense be without him? I'm if I'm a Giants fan, I'm scared to find out what the offense is without him until some of these guys step up. I do like Robinson, the young slot receiver they drafted last off season, but he wasn't healthy. We don't know what he can be at this level. So some of these guys need to kind of step up and now, or they may be forced to try and find a deal with him next year, even though I don't think that will happen.
Yeah, I don't think they'll really be forced into that. And the only reason I say that is the top 10 running backs basically become free agents at the end of this year. The only two that are under contracts that are longer than that are Kamara and who was the other one? Shoot, a mind blanking the other one that goes beyond next
CMC
season.
would it? Is it
No, his comes up at
CMC?
the end of next season. So between this off season and next off season, 8 of the top 10 running backs contracts all come up. So it's weird. It'll probably devalue the market even more because there'll be just more of them out there. Kind of like this year when all the quarterbacks were available, right? Like nobody was getting signed for top dollar because there was enough of them out there that if you missed your guy, it wasn't that big of a deal unless, you were going for Aaron Rodgers, but everybody else was kind of similar skill levels. So it wasn't a spot where you had to like reach for one of the free agents. And unfortunately for running backs, I think that's kind of where they're going to be, next year, because you're still going to have your draft class. You're going to have a lot of these guys that are free agents all at the same time. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I agree. And shout out to Flo from Bottom Line Sports, which
Yeah.
Saquon has always been a team player, and they should take care of him next season. It's a bad look for the Giants, it is, but on the other hand, say Derrick Henry
Mhm.
isn't a Titan next year. He has been not only a team player but far healthier as well.
For
He
sure.
and that's a bad look. The reality is, we only see these players take a pounding, and they feel they don't want to take a risk. If
Mhm.
it's in their business and there was a risk, an investment like that, risking millions of pounds over some a business what you don't know will be there in 6 months. I know it's a crude comparison, but that's basically the thing. They don't want to take the risk. They see the young running backs coming out, and they are the thing they want to invest in. That's more or less as long as you draft well, will be a hit for at least 5 years. So that's the reality of it. They don't view it as people or loyalty. They view it as what you can guarantee more, and that's unfortunate. Professional sports is more business than it is a sport these days, unfortunate days, and that's just the price. of doing business.
Yeah, sadly it is. It where it really started to kind of fall apart for running backs was, kind of Zeke's contract really. Uh
Yeah,
he got a huge payday, and then his production never really matched that after he signed it. Um and then, he had some injuries along the way too. Then they draft a guy like Pollard who ended up, you know, being better during the same period of time. After that contract was signed, which is also why Pollard doesn't have a contract yet. So, I mean, it's one of those where there's been a couple of guys that got that big payday and underperformed from it. And because the league is really transitioning over to a passing league, it not only devalues it in that way, but then the risk to reward isn't there either, because these guys still get hurt all the time. They don't use them as much, but they're still getting hurt a lot. So, I mean, yeah, from a business standpoint, I get why they don't want to pull the trigger, but at the same time, you feel bad for the players because, especially at that position, it's one of the most common injured players because of how much of a beating they get. Because whether they're touching the ball or not, they're hitting somebody every down, and so you feel bad for them on that front. But from the ownership, I mean, I get it. The guys, they get hurt a lot. The game's moving away from the position. You need guys that are more hybrid guys than the than a true running back at this point. You need guys that are really good out of the backfield catching balls. You need that CMC type guy. Um, and I know CMC hasn't inked a new, big deal, but he had one before, so it's not like he's never received his. Um, so yeah, I don't know. It's definitely changing a lot, and it's changing away from the player, and it's unfortunate to see, but especially as a fan, it's unfortunate to see. But from a front office, I do kind of understand why they don't love overpaying for a running back anymore.
yeah, I'd rate. So a couple comments. Flo says jumped on during his lunch. Thanks for
Nice.
that. Flo, always
Thanks for
nice
joining in.
for your support.
What's up,
And
Alec?
Mr. Alex Simpson says hi. Good to see you back, Alec. I know you've had a crazy time with work, so nice. And Flo says if teams don't have a top 10 quarterback, they need a great running back.
Mhm.
There's no more good, great RBs that are top 10 QBs.
Mhm.
Supply and demand problem it is, and the problem is, from the owner's point of view, is they can find a great running back, what they don't have to pay great money. That's the fine line. So they're of the opinion I can pay a quarterback could be if we hit around for the next 10, 15 years.
Mhm.
A running back will if we pay, we'll be paying him for what he's done, not what he's doing,
Yep.
for at least 2 years of that big deal. So that's the harsh reality of it.
Well, and
Um,
to that point, the Seahawks are a great example of this. They haven't had a starting running back make it through the season since 2014. It's 2023. Like that's it doesn't say good things for keeping running backs on the field. So one of the years they actually lost three different um, three different running backs to IR. And so I mean, at the end of the day, if you are in a situation where you keep losing guys, it's hard to want to pay them, and you know, um, yeah, yeah. I mean, the Seahawks are just the best example of that because they haven't been able to keep one on the field.
yeah, I'd rate and look at my team, the Jets. We had a great running back in Brees. That was a heck of a six of games.
Mhm.
And then he was on IR. Even if they're phenomenal, it's hard to keep them on the field. Even more so now there's an extra game. As there's more games, it's going to be harder for them not to be banged up. Alec has a question. Where do you not think the O line have more of an issue about being underpaid. Well, they do, and they don't. The great ones get paid. You've seen, obviously, some big names bounce around this free agency, get paid. The Bengals have finally got their left tackle, your guy in. Trent Williams isn't exactly underpaid, but the key point for O linemen is generally they have longer careers. The likes of Jason Kelsey is still playing at a phenomenal level,
Yep.
um, deep into his 30. So that's the difference between running backs. Their windows really 4 to 6 or 7 years, whereas as an O lineman, you could be in the league 12, 13 years. I don't know how you feel about that, but
No, I agree with you. I mean, the window for an O lineman is much larger, and if you're a tackle, you can make big money if
yeah,
you are one of the top in the league. Interior O lineman, less so.
center
A good guard sometimes.
particularly.
Centers tend to struggle getting top dollar, but a good guard can. But tackles definitely do. Um, so, oh, there we go. Um, so yeah, I don't know that they necessarily have the same problem running backs do because like you said, Dan, the length of their careers have the opportunity to be longer anyway, and the top ones still get a good payday.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you've seen with centre a few issues. Conor McGovern is getting paid 2.5 million if he's lucky for the Jets at
Mhm.
centre. He's ranked in the top 15-ish centres over the last 3 years, but unless you're a phenomenal centre, there's always other guys. I believe the Panthers picked up their centre last off season from the Ravens for something like 1.2 million. He was projected to get about 8 in free agency, but they're just not paying centres unless they're top five guys what are normally explosive run blockers or something like that, very aggressive, or they can just find guys in the draft. So similar to running backs, it's probably the centre running back thing is probably the closest comparison you can get, but at least for them, they do have longer careers.
For sure. Yeah.
So someone did get paid yesterday, I believe it was Justin Herbert, our mutual friend Rob Logan, our Chargers guy. I'm sure he's very pleased. He's not had much to cheer about being a Chargers fan, but rightly so. Now, the question what first comes to mind is it's all very well paying him, but can they support him? Because to this extent, I don't think they've done a great job at bringing in the staff to support him and the personnel. So,
Yeah.
is that talent going to be wasted? And from an ownership point of view, is that money going to be wasted? Because it's all very well paying him. But I think there's a stat like in the last 10 years, they've had broke the record 4 times for the non quarterback having the highest salary.
Mm.
Well, as our friend Nick Bodkins posted, that's a heck of a lot of money to pay for 7 wins a season, which is a fair point.
It is.
So it's going to be interesting because I don't have confidence in this ownership and the staff in place to
Yeah.
help match his talent. I don't know how you feel, but
So, I mean, like the contract was going to happen, you know, so that was a foregone conclusion. He has enough talent that he's going to get that contract, whether it was going to be with the Chargers or not. And I mean, the Chargers unfortunately tend to waste a good quarterback because I mean, Rivers could have won more games than they did. and Justin Herbert could absolutely win more games than they are. I think if they miss the playoffs again this year, which they probably will, Staley probably gets fired. So then someone else comes in and tries to right the ship. Um, but it's the Chargers, and for whatever reason, they pay because when you think back to the LT days, they had a dynamic team, but they didn't finish building the rest of the team around them. And although they were able to do some dynamic things, they ultimately weren't able to do anything once it became playoff time. So I think with the current coaching, they are probably stuck where they are. I like some of the aggressiveness that Staley does. It just probably isn't smart to do it as much as he does. But I like some of the fourth down calls, stuff like that. I mean, I do wish more teams would do it. I don't necessarily agree with where he does it. Like I watched him, go for it on fourth down from their own 20, and maybe you catch them off guard. But man, if you mess up, you're giving points away, and that team is not dynamic enough to overcome stuff like that.
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, there was some reports that Staley might have ruined, but they didn't want to pay up his contract, which, if that's true, is a telling of why they haven't been successful. I do know some Chargers reporters have told me that they don't have faith that even if they didn't make the playoffs this year, that they would let Staley go. They would wait until next year, give it 6 games, and then see because of that contract, which that's
Yeah,
pretty
I mean,
chargerous.
like if you're ultimately going to move on anyway, you might as well just rip the band-aid off
Yeah,
and and eat the bill on it, because are you really willing to sacrifice 2 seasons? Because if you go into next season and you're 1-5, you're out of that division. So I don't know that you would want to wait. Like I get the idea behind it. You don't want to pay 2 coaches and whatever, but I can't imagine that you would want to sacrifice 2 seasons. Like I think you give him this year, and if you miss the playoffs again, you have to move on, because this division is way too tight. Um, and I mean, the Broncos are going to be better than they were last year. Who knows what the Raiders are going to do? They're going to, it's the Raiders, but there's no reason for this Chargers team to be battling for the third spot in this division. Like they do have some talent. They've underperformed. So if they do have plans to move on, you might as well do it sooner than later if they can't get over the hump now.
yeah, I do agree. We will see. Um, now, but we won't spend too long on this because it's been pretty well covered. But
Mhm.
another week, another suspension based on sports gambling.
Yep.
Um, Not good, but we both said we weren't convinced there wouldn't be another wave before the season. So, unfortunately for most of these guys, it's that sort of, and I don't mean this offensively, that bottom tier roster guys who unfortunately may have lost their chance
Mm-hmm.
because they probably won't get another opportunity. So these guys are gambling with their future, not just their money. So it's unfortunate that maybe they may have to be the lesson to be told for some of the guys entering after them.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, if you're still doing it and getting caught, that's no longer I didn't know. This is you're doing some self-sabotage. Um, because I mean, at this point, it's well documented. If you were in that first wave of like a bunch of the Lions players, fair enough. Maybe there wasn't enough emphasis on it in the building, but at this point, all these guys read the headlines. I mean, it's not like any of these guys are exempt from information. So I know that in every single one of those buildings, they have to be driving this point home. Hey, just don't do this. Um, technically it's okay to gamble, but probably shouldn't do it. Definitely don't do it on site. Stuff like that. I mean, they're driving the point home at this point, just because these teams don't want to keep losing players either. It really hurts your chances to do anything during the season if you don't know who's going to be on your team. So I figure if you're getting caught for it now, that is solely on you. It is no longer I didn't know. This is I knew and I thought I could get away with it. And maybe that's part of the thrill of it. But if you're willing to gamble your whole future in the game that you've, you know, trained your whole life to get into, man, it's a it's a dumb way to go for sure. But yeah, at this point, you can no longer blame the I didn't know.
Yeah, I agree. Some bottom line sports ads about the Chargers. Chargers should have beaten the Patriots back in 2006. Intercepted Brady late in the game on the return fumble. If the DB goes down and win, most likely go on to the Super Bowl. The reality is some of the most important part of winning is not just getting the job done,
It's game
but
IQ.
common sense. Yes, so they wanted to be the hero, and instead they're the villain. So unfortunately,
Charger's gonna charger.
um, yeah. Um, so I wanted to check in with you. How you feeling? As we go into camp, are you feeling pretty confident? 'Cause we've had this conversation before. I view the 49ers as probably favourites for the division,
Yeah.
but Seattle's there behind, maybe a couple games
Yep.
behind them. But I do expect them to be better than last year, and I didn't expect them to be a playoff team. So I'm intrigued to see how this young talent gels, and I do think there's an opportunity with there being a little bit of drama around the quarterback position for the 49ers.
Mhm.
Can you capitalize on that? So I want to see whoever takes the division, I want Seattle to be snapping at their heels,
Mhm.
them knowing if they make a mistake, we're going to take your crown from you. So I wanted to get your expectations. How you feeling?
Yeah, so I agree with you there. The Niners are going to be the team to beat. And then Purdy actually is, I think it was yesterday, got listed as
Yeah,
able to make it to camp. So he should be ready to play week one. And if that's the case, obviously that is great for the Niners. Uh, but, even if he wasn't, you know, if it was Lance or Darnold, like either one of those guys can win a game or two with the way this team is constructed. So the Niners definitely seem to be the favorite to win the West again. That being said, the the Hawks are going to be right there. I think the Hawks will be significantly improved on defense, adding multiple linebackers and defensive linemen. So I think they're going to go from the second or third worst team in the league to being about I would say a middle ranked 14th to 16th ranked defense, which that would have won them a lot of games last year if they could have stopped the run at all. And then on offense, they probably have one of the most dynamic trios in the game. So they should actually end up with a top 5 type offense this season. So, you know, if you look at a top 5 offense and a middle of the road defense, that gets you in the playoffs in just about any season. Um, in this case, they will probably be a wild card again. The schedule is harder. So even though they were a 9-win team last year and the team will be better than it was last year, I don't see it being a huge like win total jump. So I think they're a 10-7 team. and go in as like the sixth seed, something like that.
Yeah, I agree. I know I'm excited to see what they are, and it's certainly going to be fun with us having so many 49ers fans in the community. I do feel for the 49ers. I want to, particularly from Carl Shanahan, I think it's time to put up or shut. The last couple of years, they've been favourites, not just for the division, Super Bowl contenders, but it's just never really happened. So I want to see that
Well, I mean, I can't really blame him
rotation.
last
But
year,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah,
I mean, if you're
yeah,
in the championship game and you have a running back start taking snaps, like the odds of winning that game is so low. So I mean, if you lose four quarterbacks during the season, I mean, the fact that they made it as far as they did is a testament to coaching and how well
I
that team
do
is
agree.
constructed. So I can't hate on them too much just because they definitely had some issues down at the end of the season.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just feel I want this year to be their year. I feel they have to take it to the next level, and I do feel they are in the right hands with Brock. I know there is a lot of 49ers fans out there. It's got to be Trey. I think that ship's probably sailed now. The Brock thing is a different conversation. He has shown more than Trey. We know he can do it in the league, but can he do it long term in the league? If he continues like how he started, they will be Super Bowl contenders if everyone's
Mhm.
healthy. But I just want to see them go to that next stage. Some parties I like the team so much. Several fun players, not just the likes of Debo, CMC, Nick Bosa. They're so good. They've got to capitalize on their window. So I want to see them get to the levels what I know they are really.
Yeah, I mean, you do want to see him make that jump, and like you said, nobody knows anything about Lance. He hasn't played enough games to really have any idea. Um, I think this is kind of a spot where, since Purdy is projected to start Week 1, um, you probably try and move Lance before the trade deadline, and you keep Darnold as your number 2, because then in game you don't. If Brock goes down or something like that, Darnold, although not amazing in my mind, has a very similar style of play. So you don't have to change your entire offense to have your second guy come in. I never really like when your backup has a completely different play style to your starting quarterback, your number one, because then if they do have to randomly come in, you're expecting your offensive line to be able to
Especially.
pivot that gameplay in the middle of a game. And I mean, that's just a recipe for accidents to happen. So because they seem to have fallen out of love with Lance, it probably makes sense for them to try and move on from him, prior to the deadline, and at least get something for him since they gave up so much to go get him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know a lot of 49ers fans aggressively think it's got to be Trey. I think there was an opportunity for him to be a stud, but it's just been too long in
Mhm.
between him playing regularly. Now, it seemed like the right decision to redshirt him not being ready. But the problem is, you need to look at the gap before he entered the NFL, the redshirt, and then the injury. That injury is the thing what cost him.
Oh, for
So
sure.
it's just unfortunate. And anyone what so like the felt, oh yeah, he's going to be a star. I think that's just based on the capital they used to draft him. I think we've seen far more from Brock that he can do it. It doesn't matter to me where they were drafted. It's what they've done now. It's not what based on what they've done in college.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No, what I was
um,
laughing about is you got a commenter on there. I hate the NFL.
Yeah, I saw that. I did put it up. And to be fair, it's a fair
Oh,
point.
it definitely
Obviously,
is.
gambling away, but to lose means it's how I feel. Like I understand reliance of myself, you, gambling to try and get the money, but you've got the money. The point of that is to get that payday. You've got the payday, but for them, it's the danger.
Yep.
They live life on the field dangerous, and I think they're just trying to get that buzz. And some of it's just to flout the authority, beat them, but it can't be done as we've seen. So, as we're on the 49ers, Nick Bosa seems to be holding out at the moment. Can be interesting. I don't think this will have any long-term effect because I don't think he's a guy what would hold out and miss games. I think he just is trying to make a point, and to that point, it won't have the desired effect they'll pay him when they want to, just because they know this, and he's shown them everything possible that needs to be done. They generally like to pay players at the end of camp
Yep.
history. So I'll be shocked if it gets to the start of the season and there's not a payday because what more does this man have to do? But I do understand his nervousness. Let's call it how it is. Both him and his brother has had injuries. So if I'm him off that stellar season last year, I want to get paid before I take the field this year. But that being said, I'm not sure he'll be willing to miss games. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think he likes the game too much to do that. But um, I I guess I don't know exactly how much time he has left on his contract. Is it just 1 year, or was it still multiple years? I thought he still had multiple years on it.
Um, so I'm pretty sure that this is his fifth year option. I'm not
Oh, okay.
sure. I'd have to.
Then yeah,
Um,
if that's the case, then yeah, absolutely, I agree with you. I mean, he couldn't have done much more than he's done. Um, so I mean, I feel like he's going to get paid. There's been some big contracts rolling out over the last couple days. Um, so I would imagine that the Niners are probably holding off at least till the first. They're probably holding off to some of the, some of the cuts, the roster cuts, because I mean, then you kind of know what your cap is really going to look like. Because I mean, his contract is going to be huge. It'll be a big number. It'll be 5 years and some crazy, close to 100 million probably. Um, so, if they can delay that contract until they know who they're actually going to have on their team, um, it probably makes sense to do that, especially for them, because they're starting to get into that spot where cap space can start to become an issue. Um, so yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think he's the player that's going to try and miss games, but I get not going to camp, and he's a high enough caliber player. He's going to keep himself ready to go. So it's not like it's some young guy that isn't going to work out and then is going to come in and not be able to perform. Like he's going to be working the whole time. He's just not going to be at camp.
so I've just checked. He has played 4 years in NFL, so this is his fifth year. So,
Yeah, so he's definitely going to get.
um, yeah, I would assume so. Although I don't know if their thing is, look, we can always franchise tag him, so we want the deal what we can get, or we can always tag him. That might be their belief. I personally wouldn't handle it that way because it sends the wrong message to the locker room. If you don't pay him, who do you pay? And say Brock has another good year this year,
Yep.
you don't want to still have to pay Bosa when you might have to pay Brock in a few years' time. So I think you do it before the season. I would hope they would.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have to, right? I mean, he's a cornerstone of that defense. I mean, you have to pay him. Like he's done literally everything you could possibly do. You don't have another guy in there that could just slide into that spot and do what he does. So I think you have to pay him. Um, Timing on when they pay him, who knows? But yeah, I mean, if they wait to franchise tag him, no player likes a franchise tag. That's why Saquon took the deal he did. I mean, he was only going to get one more year anyway. So, I mean, you sign whatever, but I, I can't imagine they're going to do that. That would definitely be really rough for morale in the locker room if you have a leading, really a top 20 guy in the league and you're not going to pay him. That seems crazy. If it was a big cap situation, sometimes players can kind of wrap their head around that. But I think they have the ability to pay him because they're not paying any quarterbacks yet. So if they don't, it's definitely a bad look on the Niners.
Yeah, I agree with that. So we will see. Now, Bo, I know you're hosting a Paul Carey show tomorrow, but have you got any content coming up of your own?
Yeah, so we got Hawk Talk every Friday. So Blue Friday, 7 a.m. on the Pacific, and yeah, so we talk about all things Seahawks, and then moving into August, we're gonna have a full lineup. So we'll be on air pretty much every day.
Um, yeah, everyone be sure to check it out, and most of all, go follow Bo's and subscribe to his channel so you can not just support him but check out his great content. I know he would appreciate the support.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you're watching us on Let's Talk Sports, make sure you like and subscribe. The subscribers are huge for all of us.
Yep, it definitely is. So as we wrap up, and if anyone has an interest in our fantasy football league, I'm looking to firm up numbers. We're gonna have a free league. We're gonna have a small entrance league for the first time ever. One for beginners, content creator league. So should you have an interest, please let me know. Try and firm up numbers by Friday so I can
Okay.
then put the draft show into practice and got
What
another
what
project
platform are you playing on?
so all sorts, so Dynasty, obviously, just PPR, so whatever people want, it will be on Sleeper, just because it's the simplest format I find. So should someone want to be, whether it's just for fun or want to play for a little bit of money, it would be $6 entry. It's our first venture into anything monetized
I got you.
at all. So we thought it was a good opportunity to start and also win some money. Nick Bodkins won the league last year and we can't let that rest. So someone needs to challenge him this year. So please reach out if you do. So, yes. So, um,
Well, actually, I guess when we're talking about fantasy stuff, if you don't play fantasy but you do play pick'em, I am also doing a pick'em poll, and it'll be on the CBS Sports app, and so rather than doing a full fantasy, this is just weekly pick'em, and we do a pick'em show all year, which is actually I think how you and I met.
yeah, it is. And yeah, I saw that. Definitely going to be joining. We normally run one as well. So, a good way to interact with the communities. Yes, so everyone be sure to check out both those things, and all what remains is for me, Bo, to thank you for joining me today.
Of course, always great talking with you.
Same here. Thank you to everyone that joined us in the comments. It really does help episode below. And join me tonight with Bobby G. We'll be talking sports, but also reviewing his own solo show we've been working on for the last few months. So be sure to check that out. And until next time, let's talk sport fans. Thanks for watching.
Enjoy the rest of your week, guys.